I write like how-to stuff. This is a story. I need you to write it with me, not edit it, like write it. And I told my fiance, I said, "Oh man, this is not what I need right now." This is, by the way, I hear myself say that often. Even I talk to myself, this is not what I need right now. The most foolish possible statement. Of course, it's what you need right now. If it weren't, it wouldn't be there. So I said, this is not what I need right now. It's a distraction. It's a disturbance. I'm busy. But it's Bob. And I love Bob. You know Bob. Bob is just like one of the
Right,
sweetest,
exactly.
wonderful people in the world. So I got to give it a listen. So we went and we visited Bob for a day, and Bob and I kicked the ideas for the story around. And I came back to my home in Virginia, or actually in Massachusetts at that point. And 6 weeks later, so I had a little free time, and I began to doodle with one of the ideas we'd kicked around for this character who was a real estate person. And I wrote the first draft of what came to be a scene late in the book, scene with this character named Deborah Davenport, who was sort of named after Rita Davenport. And as I was writing this scene,
Rita is another person I know, a dynamic business.
A whole nother story. I wrote Rita's book.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a blast writing that book together. She's such a trip. I love her. And that was a fun book to write. But I wrote this scene, and as I was writing it, it was like, this is not just me. This is like, this thing has come to life. It's like seeing something that's come to life in front of you. Like, this thing has its own existence. This is real. And I sent it off to Bob and said, I kind of like this. What do you think? And he flipped out. And so we started shooting scenes back and forth. I would draft a scene, send it to him. He would flip out and send it back with comments. And 6 weeks later, we had a draft. We took it to New York, and 12 publishers turned it down. And I'm so grateful they did, because if one of those publishers had said yes and published it, you never would have heard of it, because it wasn't ready. Sometimes when the world gives you rejection, the moral is keep fighting, keep pushing. But sometimes the moral is maybe what you're doing isn't ready yet. And this was that situation. We took the book back and revised it for 9 months, covered every page in red ink, ripped sections out and threw them away, added a whole new last chapter. We took a character named Raphael and gave him a gender reassignment procedure, and he became Rachel, Rachel's famous coffee. And so we then, after almost a year, took it back to New York, and of course it was rejected 12 more times, and then it was published, and it is now it's now a classic. It's coming on 1 million copies, and it's done well. So that made my career. I never did get to Hollywood, thank God.
Well, I was going to say maybe that's a blessing in disguise. You're talking about rejections, and of course, my other friends, Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, how many rejections they got? I mean, it was over 100. So, and then look what happened to the series of what they did. So, the whole point of you're giving the good and the bad of it, but going back to, the recipe, there's a military element to the story that I'm not going to say too much about because it's a surprise, but where did that come from?
That's such a great question, because it's not obvious. And for those of you who haven't read the book yet, this doesn't really come till late in the book. But you're right. There's a military element, and it turns out that it's pretty central to the story. It isn't just a detail at the end. It's really quite critical. You have to have a glass of water when you talk on a show. Chef Charles Carroll, my co-author, who by the way is you see chefs on TV, and sometimes we get this image of an autocratic tyrant chef who yells and screams and throws things and makes his students cry. Right? That's the master chef. Charles is the opposite of that. He's like the Bob Berg of the culinary world. He's just such a sweet man who is so devoted to building the greatness in his people. He's such a mentor. And I recognized that in him right away when we met. He approached me much the way Bob did. He said, 9 years ago, he approached me on social media and said, I'm a big fan of The Go-Giver. I love this book. I use it in my country club where I'm executive chef. I have this idea for a story. I wonder if you'd like to write it with me. And here we are 8 years later. Yes, I did want to write it with him, and we did. So Chef Charles has never been in the military, nor have I, but we both have strong associations. He, in his spare time, while running one of the busiest country clubs in the nation, this is the River Oaks Country Club in Houston, Texas, he got it in his head in 2009 that he wanted to go to Afghanistan and cook for the troops. And in 2011 and again in 2013, he took a troop. He raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and brought a dozen or so celebrities and cooks and chefs, tons of pallets of food, tons of pallets of gifts, and put on a Vegas-style show in war zones in Afghanistan and cooked for 5,000 troops, a Cajun Creole meal. And you can see it on his website, chefcharlescarroll.com. He's got great video footage and stills of the whole event. It's remarkable. 5 U.S. presidents all recorded video greetings to give Chef Charles to have him take over to the troops. And he ended up being commended and invited to the White House for a special reception and all this stuff. So he somehow got this very special connection with the military. And I've written 5 books with a former Navy SEAL who's my close friend, Brandon Webb, which we connected through my agent as a book project, but we became good buddies and business partners, and now.
Well, I have a feeling, though, John, you become best friends with everybody. So you just got that personality, you know. But I only have like maybe 4 or 5 minutes left for us, and I want to make sure we cover everything that you want to cover. Yes. And you know, I know that you said that a lot of people went through boxes of Kleenex while reading this book. And why did you make loss a central part of the book? And why does it bring out such an emotional response when people read it? But I still want to see if there's some words of wisdom you want to leave our audience with, and if there's a way, if you'd like people to contact you. So let's see if we can get all that in about
all of that in. All right, excellent, good. That's my challenge. So turn the egg timer over now. So, you know, I believe, and I'm sure that Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield will agree, as so will John Milton Fogg and Randy Gage, the best learning happens through stories. People learn through stories. We've been doing it for thousands of years. And you learn best through stories when you feel, where there's emotion. You know, you learn ideas and thoughts, but you learn them with your heart. You learn them with your feelings. I will tell you that that if I didn't cry while I was writing this book, you wouldn't cry while you were reading it. It's got to be, to me, I love writing parables, but they've got to be authentic. They've got to be rich, real human stories. And loss is just such an important part of the story that it became the focal point for me, and the love. The love that emerges, not a romantic love, but almost a deeper kind of love that comes out as the critical element at the end of the book. So, you know, there are things that Chef and I want to teach, that we want people to learn about how to live a great life. But we learn those things through wrenching, real human experience. And that's what this book is all about. So, yeah, people tell us that they read the book and they come back and they say, I cried an awful lot in the book and I wasn't expecting that. I also realize that I'm a better cook. I feel better in my kitchen now, and I'm more excited about cooking, and that's pretty cool.
Wow, that is great. Wow.
Yeah, you asked about words of wisdom, or in a way,
what's next for you? We've got only 2 minutes left, John. So I want to know what's next for you, and if you would like people to be in touch or know how to contact you, if you want to give out your website, what you'd like to do.
We've got a new Go-Giver book coming next spring. Can't wait. Oh, wow. We may have another Chef Charles and John Mann book coming as well in the future. The best way to follow that and follow me and get information on my books is my website, which is simply my name, johndavidmann.com. And you'll find everything about me and all my books right there on that website.
That's fabulous. So you're getting ready to write another, is this with Bob?
It is. Bob and I have already written it. We can't wait for everyone to read it. It's a book about influence and about resolving conflict. And there's a large dog named Solomon and a small cat named Cleo. And I can't tell you more.
You got me right there, because I'm a big animal lover. As a matter of fact, I have a cat right behind me right now as we're doing this interview. Most people who listen to me know they call him my assistant producer because he always has something to say. He's a Siamese, and I'm petting him all the time to keep him quiet. But
it's just a book where John and Bob come clean about our love of animals in this Go-Giver book.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, John. I mean, remember, this is a fascinating man. You need to go to his website, johndavidmann, MANN.com. Thanks so much for being with us today, John. I could interview you all day. This has been wonderful. Thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gailcarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.